The objective here is to go over an approach to testing in my CIS and CNG courses. Right here I'm just trying to give a little guidance. We've all seen a variety of study guides or terms on the test to study for that professors will give students. I gave one out, which was just a list of words. I also said the best study guide is your actual notebook. This video will just go over how to use that to study and then the answers to the questions on the test we just took. So let's start with this idea. How many of you say one thing and then do another? Like, how many times do we tell ourselves we're going to do something, like study, and then just not? That's step one. Following through on what you tell yourself you'll be doing. Avoiding whatever distraction there is out there that would keep you from doing that. Now, one of the things I wish I knew in college is when I was in a course, I should have been recognizing the most challenging part of what I was learning and then just really focus on that, right? Why study what you already feel very comfortable with or already know? My version of studying in college was just go through the notes I wrote down, read through the book if there was a book. But for the most part, all I really did, I just worked hard in class, just try to focus in class. But that's just me. I'm not a very good example, or past me is not a good example. I just was never one of those students who was overly concerned with the grade. But by doing this thing where I really focused on just the class while being in the class, and then turning in those assignments, I just felt like I created a great buffer for myself, a buffer in the beginning that was often destroyed by the actual final exam grade I got. But my grades were not really bad. I didn't have to do any serious reflection to figure out what needed to change. But the teacher me sees a lot of students failing, and I think they should take advice like this, creating the buffer in the beginning, actually studying when they know there are things that are challenging. If I was to give you some specific examples of how to study here, I would say use Google Image, create questions from your own notes, then answer those questions, or get answers to questions that you've come up with. I suggest you look for other sources of information, not just from the professor or from the Google image or just one source, look for multiple sources. And so I have my college degree, but I used these types of strategies to do the things I'm a little more proud of, to be honest. I'm a little more proud of the certs I have. I know they're baby certs, the A+, Cloud Essentials. At least I know my study techniques, they succeeded. Because taking any of these types of certs I don't think is easy. Even if you know the material, you have to focus for that 90 or more minutes straight. Okay, so since I had two different classes, this next part will be different depending on which class you're in. What I'm going to do, though, is this Q&A format, so I'm going to show you the test question and then show you what the right answer is, show you ways you could have studied to get that right answer based on what I gave ahead of time, the study guide and the notes from class. And then just moving forward here, I want you to think about this. Einstein said something like, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, but expecting different results. If you did not pass the test, I suggest you not do the exact same thing you did before the test. And here's a couple examples. Before the test, when I gave you the list of terms, did you do anything with that list? Did you identify anything challenging, any challenging terms, and go after that knowledge? Did you ask me or a friend, or did you Control F in your notebook to review what you wrote about that term? I even suggest going to Wikipedia and using Control F with those terms as well. And I'll let you read the rest here, but there's many things you can do with just the terms that I tell you will be on the test. I think part of this know thyself mentality I always preach to my students goes beyond just knowing if you're a visual or auditory learner, a textbook learner, maybe a debater, a social person who likes to discuss the learning. More than just that, know what you ultimately want out of life. Are you just trying to get this college credit? Then let that desire motivate you to make the right choices with these terms as you're trying to study, as you may be trying to do something a little painful here. If you're one of the students who want to go into the tech field or industry, this is probably what you'll be doing. The tech industry is rapidly changing. There's always new technologies. You have to research and learn about these new things in order to stay employable. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive into these questions themselves. All right, so for my CNG 101 class, the first question on the test was, why must a network engineer understand the concept of encoding? Well, we have different types of encodings, ASCII encoding for letters and a JPEG, as you see right here, for images. If the point of networking is to send data, such as textual or images, from one computer to the other, it'd be good that you know each type of file is encoded in a particular way. If you're looking at some network traffic and you can see these particular encodings going by, you know what types of files the sender or receiver is working with. The next question is, what is the difference between a router and switch? And this question was literally from one of the days we did our book work, so that was a Wednesday. But let's say you were absent that day. As long as you had been studying router and switch, just learning about these concepts when they're thrown at you in the videos and the core lessons, that is, you'd be good to answer it. So jumping to a student notebook example here, I just Control F'd and typed in switch, and I see that book day. It was on 9/11 actually. And the student provides just one possible answer to the question, that switches are not working with IP addresses like routers work with IP addresses. They're looking at the MAC addresses. So if I'm studying for the test and the teacher had sent that list of terms, and for this class, it being a bigger vocabulary class, there's more terms. If I'm going through the terms and I come across switches right here, I would jump to my notebook and Control F switches. Okay, next question. Why would anyone want to use a command line over the graphical user interface? Most students got this question right, actually. It's just all about that speed. Speed and efficiency. People may be used to clicking the mouse, but actually typing is faster. Or at least in like 90% of the cases, it's faster. And then I guess I should even say it depends on what type of work you're doing, but if you're the network engineer, the type of work they do utilizes the command line quite a bit. So then the next question is a softball question. Give me at least one example of a command line command. We practiced these several days in class, so as long as you wrote that, like ls, mkdir I saw, this is another question students were getting right, so I don't have to worry about going over that one too much. Okay, for this question, what does next hop mean? If you remember our redundancy lesson, one of the ones I was kind of proud of creating there, it talked about hopping from one router to the other. Now this next question was a little tricky. What's the transmission speed? And don't worry, I am not worried about you being exact here, but what's the transmission speed of a Cat5 cable, and what would a cable like this connect to? So that second part of the question is really where I was rewarding points. But I love the creativity I saw from students who they were not even close to what a ballpark good answer would be. Now they know that these are some numbers they might need to try to store in their memory banks. But the point is, I saw some very creative answers, like somebody said Cat5 is slower than Cat6. Some people said Cat5 is faster than Cat4. So that type of logical thinking, proof that they know what these cables are all about, is helpful. But the real answer I'm looking for is cat cables connect computers to routers or modems or switches. See, the cat cable is all about the LAN. If you said the cat cable is connecting your house to an ISP or to a server, I mean, there are cat cables in server rooms, but that's not the cable used for long distance data transmission. So again, acceptable answers would be ones like you see on the screen here that I was explaining earlier. This next question is, why are protocols important in networking? What type of protocols am I talking about? We've looked over a few of them. We got HTTP, FTP, IP, TCP. These are all protocols. The P is for protocol. And all these are agreed upon ways to send and receive data. Some students, actually the majority of my students, probably because of the way I teach, focused on security protocols, which was just fine. Next up is, how does the OSI model relate to what network engineers do? And that is, their job usually is focused on layer 1 and 2. Those higher levels, a little less of a concern for you. It'll benefit you from knowing them all very well. But if the network engineer's job is to design and architect these networks and look at what computers are sending and receiving, then their knowledge of this process would be helpful. Not to mention when at the water cooler, these guys are talking about like layer 1 and 2 and 3, and they're using the term layer, and you should know what those layers are referring to. Because at the end of the day, a person who is transmitting data, they have an application level they start at. And so then as the data, the ones and zeros, they grow through each layer with additional information so that that packet, that frame, can go through a physical layer, a physical link to a person. And as it gets unpacked, the right person who has requested that data will eventually see that data at an application level. Okay, next question. What are people accessing when they connect to a server? And remember, a server is just a computer. Let's say I did not use my notes. Going back to our list, many of these words, I said OSI, right? Here's the OSI model, and then network layers, those are the same things. I just put them twice so you could see them twice, because if you go to your notebook and you search for those, part of that studying strategy I suggest, I tell students the best study guide is their notebooks. But what are we on? We're on servers. So if I type in servers here, this particular student has 16 instances of that word. But let's try another strategy. Let's say you just had a rough beginning, so your notebook isn't the best. If I go to Wikipedia and type in servers, oops, not Wikimedia servers. Oh, I should flip this around. Here's some Google foo for you. So server in computing, and once I'm here, I'm going to type in server. All right, it pops up quite a bit. But I like this: mail server, print server, server class hardware. I don't need the history of a server. Operations of servers are cool, but oh man, this word is everywhere. What was the question we're trying to answer? The question is, what are people accessing when they connect to a server? Well, as I see the name of some of these things, like application's a good answer. Catalog is fine, but you as a maybe younger student would gravitate towards things like database. You're accessing a database, you're accessing a file, that's a good one right there. Games, that'll work. So this is a good way to utilize Wikipedia to study as well. The video that went over this that day kind of focused on the folder access and file access, so any of these answers are correct as well. Okay, a tough one here, but sort of not so tough. I just needed your connection that a routing table is helping traffic get from one place to the other. So the best answer I saw is both of these ideas are all about getting traffic to the right network or computer. That is what a routing table is for, and that is what NAT is for. They're just doing their jobs in different ways. And the only reason I mentioned NAT in the other question was because we had gone over it so much in class. So I thought if by referring to something you knew, you could kind of pivot and use that to answer the routing table question, I thought that'd be a good idea. Now, if you want me to emphasize in the video for learning's sake the difference between NAT and a routing table, NAT is taking these private IPs and translating it to this one public IP to then go retrieve whatever service you're asking for from your LAN. And then when it gets brought back, NAT reverses what it did. That way the right person, the right device gets the right type of data. And I know in class we've talked a lot about the whole reason for NAT existing is so we could save some of these IPv4 addresses that are very limited. Well, that's it. We only have 3 more tests. So remember the advice I gave you in terms of studying and then focusing on classwork with those core lessons. That'd be great. If you have any strategies you're using that allowed you to be successful or you think other people should know, please let me know about that. Maybe I can include it in the next video.